Hey friends, Green Scott is here. Today we are going to be making some cannabis oil. First, what we're going to do is I got my gloves on and I've been grinding down some pretty high grade marijuana here, organically grown by myself, pesticide, herbicide free, thank you very much. No chemicals used to make this good quality stuff right here. What I'm doing right now is I'm kind of breaking up these buds before I decarboxylate them. Some people might go ahead and put their weed in the oven first, and then after decarboxylation, they break up the buds. Where I live, it's pretty dry, so our buds are ready to be grinded up right now. But if you lived in an environment where it was very moist, it would be hard to kind of grind all this up, especially using like your gloves, your fingers, or a grinder or scissors. Just something to consider. Regardless, before or after decarbing, we're going to grind up our buds just like this. In here, I got about 2 ounces. I would like to show you 2 different ways of doing this. One is my favorite way with coconut oil. And then another way is to make cannabis butter. I already have my oven preheated to 230. I get a turkey bag and I put my cannabis in the turkey bag. Most people don't do that. But I go get my stuff tested over at the Good Lab. Obviously this turkey bag's way huge. What size is this one? I guess it doesn't say a size, just turkey size. But anyways, I use turkey bags, and the reason why I do this is because when you're decarboxylating, I was told that sometimes your terpenes and whatnot might get lost in the atmosphere as it's heating up. And the best way to hold on to all of that and to keep it in the cannabis here is by putting it in a turkey bag. So here's 2 ounces of cannabis, grind up nice and smooth. I took out the majority of stems and seeds, but there's still going to be some in there. I place it on my cookie sheet just like this. I like that this is a little puffy because as it goes in the oven, the heat will make this puff out like a balloon. So, oven is ready. Cannabis is ready. I'm going to put it in here and set the timer for 30 minutes. There we go. Don't forget to press start. Now, I'm going to do this 2 ways, one with butter and one with coconut oil. I prefer using MCT coconut oil. It stands for medium chain triglyceride. And basically, this kind of coconut oil, and it's very healthy for you, it never solidifies. It always stays in a liquid form. There's also this kind extra virgin coconut oil, cold pressed, unrefined. This one smells so good. This one is solidified right now. And if the temperature is warm, it'll become liquid. If the temperature is cool, it'll become a solid. I use this for certain ingredients, like if I wanted to make creams, or if I wanted to make like cannabis capsules, like the cannabis medicine filled in capsules, I use this. Also, if I want to make brownies, this is my favorite coconut oil to use to make brownies. If you're going with a oil-like method, you could also use extra virgin olive oil if you wanted to use that too. These are all great for cooking as well. If you're going to use this kind, the cannabis needs something else to bind it to the oil. So one thing people like to add is either sapphire oil or a little bit of sunflower oil. Not too much, probably just about a spoon or 2 full with the whole entire thing. I'll show you about that later. Another thing you could also do if you don't want to do oil and you want to make butter is grab, this is about a half a pound, 8 ounces of butter. I prefer goat's milk butter. Oh my gosh, if you've never tried it, yes, I highly recommend it. So right now we got our oil cooking and we're just going to wait. When it's done, we'll get back. The timer went off. Time to take it out. Got my Halloween oven mitt. Because it's that time of year. I just want to show you guys what it looks like when you go take it out. See what I mean by it puffs up like that? You do not want to touch this right now. Do not open it. it down on your counter, let it cool off for just a few minutes. Also, I turned my oven off. I filled up my crock pot with 2 cups of my MCT coconut oil. You could find this online. I got it from Amazon. Or if you're using regular coconut oil, I use 2 cups of that. So it'll be 2 cups of coconut oil or whatever oil you want to use. 2 cups per 1 ounce of freshly grinded up weed. I don't want to forget to put in my spoonful of safflower oil. I have this set in my crock pot on low for now, but as I'm cooking the cannabis in it, it's going to be set on warm for about 4 or 5 hours. So let's go ahead and put this in. This is going to get all warmed up while I'm letting the weed cool off. Okay, so over here for the butter, can you guys see butter? I don't have a double boiler, and if you don't have the double boiler set, that's fine. You just get yourself a regular pan and put another pan on top of that. I don't have another pan the same size, so I'm just using like a heat-safe glass dish. It works the same way. I chopped up my favorite butter into cubes, and this will help them melt faster. Just going to carefully put that on there. And I'm going to turn this oven on as low. Actually, I want to get it boiling at first, so I'm going to turn it up probably about a medium-high heat until this water starts boiling. Then I'll probably turn it down just a little bit. You don't want this boiling too crazy. So I have a half a pound of butter in here. Most people do a whole cup of water, and I don't really understand the point of putting in a whole cup of water because in the end they end up straining it anyways. So instead of 1 whole cup, I'm just going with 3/4 of a cup. I still want to follow the same recipe that everyone else is doing. I'm sure that they have a good reason why they're doing it, but you'll see in the end. We end up straining this, keeping the butter and getting rid of the excess water. Okay. So this is going to warm up and melt. This is going to warm up. This is going to cool down. We'll get back at it and weigh out the cannabis. All right, friends. Weed is cooled. I'm going to go ahead and weigh it just because I want to make sure. I'm putting half of this in my butter and the other half in my coconut oil. I want to go back real quick and talk about decarbing. Depends on what kind of cannabinoids that you're looking for. A lot of people might be able to benefit off of cannabis in its acidic form, therefore you may not need to decarboxylate. And a lot of people want to decarboxylate their THC, converting it from THC8 into THC when it gets decarboxylated. That way they get that nice high when they're consuming this medicine. Honestly, when I typically make my oils, I do a very, very, very light cook in the oven. That way I have both the cannabinoids in their acidic form and their converted form. And it shows up on the test results when I go to get the oil tested. So that's just me personally. I know a lot of people like just having edibles and getting really high off of them. So if that's you, do the decarboxylation in the oven for 230 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes. So good. Just a bit under 2 ounces. Obviously it took some weight off of there. This already has my coconut oil, a spoonful of safflower oil warmed up. I'm just going to put a little bit in here and bring this back to weigh it to make sure I'm still doing good and not going over too much. All right. Something like that, a little bit more. Yep, that's about halfway there. And then the other half I'm going to put in this butter very carefully because my glass bowl, since I don't have a double boiler, pretty small. I moved this over here so that way, I don't know, something about this burner, it just gets real hot no matter how low you put it. Plus this way you guys could kind of see the butter over here and then the coconut oil over here. It works out well. I'm getting my favorite spatula. I'm going to blend this in over here really nice and mix it around. And then I'm going to be super careful over here blending this in and mixing this around. So some people like to take their cheesecloth and like their decarbed grinded up cannabis and roll it in like a burrito and wrap some twine around it. That's an awesome idea, especially if you want to be very, very neat and careful about it. I'd highly recommend you go with that. Me personally, I like the cannabis being swished around in the butter or in the oil. That way it gets to every single little inch and piece, and I'll strain it later through the cheesecloth. So some recipes people will have it wrapped up in a cheesecloth burrito. I just personally like this way better. Ooh, that's nice and mixed in. I'll bring you guys in for an up close look. So, gotta unplug my phone. All right, here it is in the crock pot. This is definitely submerged. If I wanted to, I could add some more cannabis on top of this. Even if it's not decarbed, remember what I was talking about, you get both benefits, THCA and THC, CBDA and CBD, or if you got a really cool strain, CBGA and CBG. All right, here it is in the butter. That's looking really nice. It's so close to the top. I would definitely say that 1 ounce of decarbed cannabis per 8 ounces of butter is perfect. But in my opinion, if I look in here, and this is just me, there's so much more room, more weed could go in here. So I'm going to go ahead and grind up, slightly decarb, a little bit more cannabis, probably another ounce, because I just feel like another ounce can fit in there. So let's just say if you had 1 ounce of weed and you wanted to do, hold on, I'm trying to get my phone straight. Let's just say you had 1 ounce of weed and you wanted to do maybe just 1 cup of oil instead of 2 cups of oil, okay? But, I mean, I got plenty of weed. It's October. We've harvested a bunch. Plus, I had a whole bunch from a friend, and that's what I'm using to make this. So I'm just going to go ahead and, my turkey bag's pretty clean. I'm going to grind up some more cannabis, stick it in the oven, decarb it for a little while, and when it's ready, I'm just going to put it back in here. In the meantime, I'm just keeping an eye on this. As you could see, I got my thermometer on here. At the moment, the butter is on a medium-high heat, and I'm just kind of watching it and making sure that this doesn't boil too much. I just want it to kind of stay nice and warm. And I'm going to let this cook for 4 hours. I'm going to let this cook for 4 hours. But I'm here hanging out in the kitchen all day, and I'll be keeping an eye on it, doing like this. Just mixing it around and stirring it just a little bit. Being very, very, very careful because this bowl is so small. But hey, it's all I got. What can you do? All right, I'll bring you guys back in a little bit later when probably we're about halfway through these 4 hours. All right, friends. So round 2, I got another ounce of weed decarbed. I'm going to go ahead and put it here in the crock pot. Smells really good. Oh, one thing you really want to be careful when you're decarbing weed and cooking it in oil or butter is you want to make sure your windows are open because your house is going to get stinky. So just be careful of that. Also, if you're in your kitchen, like any articles of clothing, it's going to smell all over you all day long. So be careful where you're walking into. Probably wouldn't want to go anywhere near a police station smelling this good. All right, so now in my crock pot, this is exactly the consistency I'm looking for. I got 2 cups of oil, 2 ounces of weed, 1 spoonful of sapphire oil or sunflower oil. It's a lichen. If you want to half this recipe, then 1 cup of oil, 1 ounce of weed, half of a spoonful of sapphire oil or sunflower oil, some type of lichen. This is much nicer. This is starting to get to a nice thick ratio. It's like an equal ratio, in my opinion, of oil to cannabis. I guess that also depends on the potency you're kind of looking for. But me, if I could put more cannabis in, I would. So I got to be careful not to put too much. Butter is looking on point, staying nice and thick. I'm just giving it a quick little stir. You know, I come in here and I just check on it and I make sure that the water underneath is looking good. So I got water in this pot and it's sort of boiling, just a little bit of boiling, not too crazy. My heat on the stove is at medium, so we're looking really good. But let's just say while I'm checking on these and stirring every 5-10 minutes, if I come and look here and this water level is getting too low, then very carefully and only off of the side, I'm going to pour just a little bit more water in here. Just a little bit at a time. That way that water level stays nice and boiling. It's mainly the steam off of it that you're trying to get that's going to keep this nice and melted without overcooking it. So that's why they want you to use a double boiler, and make one if you have to, in my case. So let's get a nice close-up. Here is the oil. I'm going to stir it around. Okay, so see how like the cannabis is just sitting there right at the very edge? You could smash it down a little bit if you want to. That also works. I also like to scrape the sides of the bowl after I stir it to make sure that the cannabis goes down. I've also decided to start using 2 different spatulas, one for the butter, one for the oil. And here's the butter, nice and thick with this consistency of cannabis to butter water ratio. So I just give it a little stir just like that, just to kind of move things around. That way things don't just quite settle in one spot or settle on the bottom. Same thing about getting these edges down to get all the cannabis in there. Okay? So basically that's what I'm gonna do for the next few hours. Keep an eye, stir, windows open, we're good. Okay, we're back, just checking in on these and stirring them up a little bit. Smelling really nice. Just stirring this one all together. This one, I'm noticing the water level is getting very low. Don't forget to constantly check that water level. You don't want it to run out of water. So very carefully, I'm just pouring some new water in the bottom. Not too much. If you heard that, the temperature went down, so the water's no longer boiling right now because I had just added colder water to the mix. So I'm doing it about a cup at a time, just adding a cup at a time of water. It'll take 1 minute and then it'll get back to boiling again. And then stir this up in the butter. This one's real nice and thick. I like it. So that's all. I'm going to constantly be doing this. Adding water, stirring. I come back here like every 15 minutes just to keep an eye on everything and make sure we're still running smooth, which is great because I tend to run out of water here about every 20 minutes or so. So I've always had to keep refilling. And I could already hear it like starting to bubble again. So far we're doing great. I'm just staying on top of it. I wrote down my hours so I know what time I need to come back and turn everything off. Will be about 2:30 my time. And I'll bring you guys back on when it's time to strain. All right, friends, I think we're all ready to go ahead and strain out our oils. I'm going to do my coconut oil first. I like having one of these bowls that has a special lip to pour it out. So I'm going to get a strainer like this and place it over. And then I also have some cheesecloth right here. You get like the unbleached kind. Pour that on top. Still a little hot. Let me grab some gloves. Wait. All right, let's dump this in. Well, it helps if I take that off. Go. You could wait for this to cool off if you don't want to grab it while it's hot. I would actually highly recommend that. So I'm just very carefully pouring all of it in, including the cannabis material that's still in there. And while I'm holding this with one arm, and if this is too heavy for you, it might help if you have a friend. And I'm going to use my spatula to scrape all of the stuff off the sides of the bowl and put it in here. With the cannabis oil, this part's actually pretty easy. You only need to really strain it like this once. When you're done, you put your cannabis oil in the mason jar. Wait for it to cool off, and you could store it in the fridge. Another thing that I like doing, especially if I'm using, what did I do with it? Oh, especially if I'm using like this kind of coconut oil, I like grabbing these little packets. Because they're, you can find them at the store. They're for like sauces or something like that. But if I was to store after it's cooled down, of course, I could store it in here, put these in the freezer, and anytime I want to make a recipe with some coconut oil, I just pull out one of these. So those are pretty cool if you wanted to do that. Now, very carefully, let that sit for a few minutes. I'm just going to tie this up. And this, I don't usually like squeeze it out, you know what I mean? I just let it sit for a while and drip, and maybe I might push on it just a little bit, but not too much. And when all the oil has came out of here, this can still be reused for other purposes. What I typically do if I'm not needing it immediately and I want to save it for another day is I'll put it in a Ziploc bag. After it's cooled, of course, I put it in a Ziploc bag, stick it in the freezer. If I wanted to reuse it, one thing people can do is like put it on an area that's aching. Like if your back's really aching, you could put it on there. Or I would soak it like in a bath if I wanted to take like a foot bath. You know what I mean? Just soak your bath in some hot water and then put this in there. And then the bottom of your feet can absorb what was left in this. This could take a while. Then it's a lot easier to take this and pour it in your jar wherever you want to store it. Here's an easy little hint. Say if you're using one of those smaller bottles of oil like the extra virgin olive oil, after it's cooled, pour it back into that bottle. So here is this, nice and dark. This, because of the MCT coconut oil that I used, that will always be in a liquid form. All right, I'm going to put that off to the side. Get every last inch. Okay, now let's do the one for the butter. With the butter one, I'm using one of these glass dishes. It's oven safe. So I'm going to put that there. Clean this off. Put the strainer right on top of here. Well, my strainer obviously kind of wants to come down a little bit, so I'm going to prop it up on something. That works. Get my piece of cheesecloth for the butter. And is this hot? No, I let it cool off a bit. So I'm going to grab that very carefully as to not hurt myself or spill too much. And I'm going to let the butter go through here. The thing about the butter is since we added some water to it, the water is still kind of in here. So we put it in this special dish here because it's got a lid I could use. I could put this dish in the fridge and let it cool for about 2 hours. And then I'll come back later and the butter will separate and come to the top and the water will be at the bottom. So I've seen people squeeze this out too. Maybe this one you might need to squeeze it because maybe the butter just kind of doesn't want to come out. So let me show you what this one looks like. Very carefully because it's still dripping. So you see that? You could kind of already see a separation starting to happen right there, huh? I'm gonna let this drip for a few minutes. I'll probably end up squeezing the most of the butter out and then I tie up the top. And then I'll put this and the other one in a Ziploc bag after they've cooled. This guy right here, I'll put a lid on it and then I'll stick it in the fridge for 2 hours and I'll show you guys what that separation looks like. So we are done with our coconut oil. It's perfect. I'm just going to let it sit with the lid off and let it cool. And we're going to wait a few minutes for the butter and then we're going to stick the butter one in the fridge and then that one will come back to it later. So we're going to put on some gloves for this part. Because as we squeeze the butter out, your skin can very easily absorb that butter and THC. So I'm going to put on some gloves and squeeze all the oil out. Butter. I'm not trying to squeeze too hard, but I do want to get all that butter out. All right, there we go. All right, let me show you what it looks like. All right, we're back. This has been in the fridge for a couple hours. You see how it's separated? So very carefully, I'm going to try and get just the butter part out. Without splashing it back on my face. Alright, let's see if that worked. There we go. So I'm lifting it up. Oh, look at that. Nice thick sheet of cannabis butter. I'm going to let this sit on a paper towel. But just to give you an up close. Still dripping everywhere. I don't want it to drip all over my kitchen, but you see that? It's just kind of like a nice thin sheet of butter. I'm going to put it on a plate with a paper towel just like that. That way the paper towel can absorb the water. This leftover bit right here, which is mainly water, you could go ahead and do that same double boiler method we just did earlier, pouring this liquid back into there and watching the whole thing cook again. You'll strain it all over through a cheesecloth. You'll strain it through a cheesecloth one more time, and then it'll separate again, and then you'll keep the very last sheet of the butter on top. So this had absorbed most of the moisture. Here's this nice can of butter. This is my other oil we had made today. This has been stored in the fridge for about 3 hours. So still liquidy, you see. I could keep it stored in the fridge and they'll last a very long time. Definitely 6 months. They can last longer than that. I just highly recommend that at least you use your medicine within 6 months. Then, like I was saying about that other coconut, the one that gets solid when it's chilled. See? This is what I mean. It stays solid until you warm it up. All right. I hope you guys had a wonderful time making cannabis butter and cannabis oil. I don't think anybody has ever done both things on one video. So if you guys liked what you watched today, please give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment. Let me know if there's any other different methods that you like to do a little bit differently on how you make oil or how you make butter. In the future, I'm going to upload some videos about how to use your oil to make cool things like, well, honestly, I just like making brownies. I also like using it to make cream and stuff for the skin. And this kind of oil, actually, I like using this one to put into little capsules. So some people like to take capsules. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's about it for this video. So stay tuned, you guys, for the next ones. Cheers.